Cyberpunk 2077 in 2022. I've only played 1.5 and 1.6 updates. I don't know when 1.5 came out, but I've only been playing Cyberpunk for the past 3 or 4 days. So I've been playing partly of the new 1.6 update, which came out like 2 days ago, and whatever. So everything I'm going to be saying here, even though it is a 2022 thing, I've only played the game in 2022, and I did play the free trial about 6 or 7 months ago, but the game came out, the 10th of December 2020, so for all the problems, and people, I don't know, there was a lot of problems that have been patched and stuff, I don't know about them. This review isn't going to be about that. So to start things off, we've got the world. Now, the world visually looks great. The world visually, in terms of how Night City looks, especially at night, Night City surprisingly looks good at night. Yeah, who would have thought? But Night City at night, then you've got it at daytime, it looks great. I wouldn't quite say perfect, exemplary, outstanding, a masterpiece, nothing like that, but it looks good. It looks decent. It's you could be driving in a car, on a motorbike, down one of the highways, which are well designed. You have the city in the background, the Badlands. There's so many areas to explore. The Badlands is completely different from the city, which is different from the oil yard. There's other parts of the city that look decrepit and disgusting and abandoned. Pacifica is a good example of that, but there's another part just outside of Pacifica which at night time looks like there's been a riot happening there or something. It looks almost like, you'll see red flares sometimes in certain areas. There'll be some areas that just don't have electricity, barely, if any, so there might be like a few lights from like fires made in trash cans, but besides, or like barrels or whatever. But the world just looks really, really good, especially for something that's meant to be 2077. It's a believable 2077. That being said, graphically, the world's average. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. I'd say it's slightly better than average. But for a game that came out on the 10th of December, I'm playing on the Series S, by the way, I should specify. So I'm not on last gen, but I'm not on the peak of next gen. I'm on just the next gen, but whatever. But I've even looked at gameplay online and stuff, and it's all similar. Series S is not far different from the X, if different at all. But so graphically, for a game that came out on the 10th of December 2022, or 2020, sorry. So right at the smack dab end of 2020, the game is fine. I'd probably give it like a 6.5, maybe 7. Graphically speaking, it's absolutely fine graphically. Nowhere near as good as like The Last of Us, which came out I think a year before or something, but nowhere near as good as The Last of Us 2, or the remaster now, if you want to say that. Nowhere near as good as a game I recently completed again, which is Red Dead Redemption 2. I recently did an IMDb review on that as well, but nowhere near as good as Red Dead Redemption 2, which came out 2017. Nowhere near as good as the year earlier, I think it was 2019, although I've never actually played The Last of Us 2, but I've just seen online and it looks great. Nowhere near as good as those two, so it's not a 10 out of 10 or even a 9 out of 10 in this thing, but graphically speaking, it could vary anywhere from like a 6 to an 8 out of 10. Graphically, it's fine. It's easily passable, if not actually decent. Like, it's fine graphically. I don't think anyone's complaining about the graphics of Cyberpunk 2077. Very dead most of the time. Don't get me wrong. On the old gen consoles, I've seen gameplay of the cities, and there's like, you're lucky if you see 5 pedestrians on the same street in the most populated area of Night City. It's absolutely abysmal. But even on next gen consoles, when there's a lot more people roaming about the streets, they all bash into each other. There's no physical contact between people. You could walk into somebody, they're like a ghost. Sometimes they might say a quip like, or not quip, maybe that's not the right word, but they might say something like, "Oh, watch yourself," or "Hey, where are you going?" or something like that. Maybe not those exact words, but something along those lines. But they still go right through you. It doesn't feel like they have any contact. Everyone in the world feels fake. Nobody, maybe some of the main story characters, sure, but the actual NPCs, nobody. It doesn't feel like you have. They don't feel real. In Red Dead, if I shot somebody in the face in the middle of town, it feels like I've shot somebody in the face in the middle of town. In this game, it doesn't. 99% of the buildings that look, even though they look very cool visually, as I said, 99% of everything is, you can't go in. So you see a cool building, you can't go in. There's this cool fast food place called Bucker Slice. It's got like a chain, you know, like in GTA where they've got Burger Shots or Clucking Bell or something like that. This it's like kind of like one of those, like a franchise around the city. There's loads. There's like at least 3 or 4, maybe even more Bucker Slices throughout the city. It's like a franchise, a chain, you know, like a McDonald's. You can't enter even one of them, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think one of them's even accessible. The only food you can actually get is food that's just from like little marketplace like vendors. Like it's the world feels dead. The conversations that NPCs have is pretty shit. They're passable, maybe, kinda, but you know, it doesn't. I'm not saying every single person should feel like an individual person. I'm not saying it has to be as good as Red Dead 2's, yada yada yada, but it just doesn't feel alive. On the next gen consoles, like on the last gen especially, everyone, like this whole world's dead. The world does not feel alive even slightly. But even on the next gen consoles, I'm on the Series S, but even what I've seen on the X and PS4 or 5 rather, the world feels so not barren, but like the cars that like people. There might be many people down the street, but like, and this is only in the city centers, by the way. If you're not in the city center, the world feels dead. Like you go out to the Badlands, and there's barely anybody. Even in the little areas, there isn't. And I know it's meant to be more abandoned than Night City, more of a, but it's still, you know. But even in Night City, unless you're in like one of the main areas, if you're in like these little back alleys and stuff, you'll struggle to find there might be like 3 or 4 people, if that. But it's hard to explain. Looking at gameplay, you might think, oh, I'm chatting out my ass, but you've got to play the game to know, or see what I see, kind of thing. But it just feels dead. Like I said, nobody has physics. The cars, sometimes you'll see a car spawn in. You can just see it spawn in. It just looks stupid, and that's very often. Sometimes you'll just be driving, and a car will spawn in front of you, behind you, beside you. The cars, they don't feel like real people. And something I've noticed, and maybe I'm just very, very unlucky, but I've been playing for like 30, 40 hours now. I don't think there's a single NPC that rides a motorbike. You can get motorcycles, motorbikes, whatever you want to call them. You can get motorcycles in the game. And there's some cool ones, you know, like Akira. There's one that looks like the one from Akira that I use quite often. There's some cool looking motorcycles or whatever. Story's absolutely fine. It's nothing special. The amount of choice you get is okay. It's actually decent. I would have liked more, but that's maybe just me being greedy. I feel like the choice was fine. There are certain times where I was a bit annoyed with the choices, but that's more maybe personal preference. I think basically what I'm trying to say is I think there's enough choice for it to be called a choice-based game, for it to be this, that, and the other. But there's like not as much choice as people may think looking from the outside in. But it's enough. I'd give it like a 5 out of 10 in terms of choice and stuff. In terms of story, I'd probably give it a 5. There's multiple endings. I've only got one of them. I'm on my way to a second one, and I've seen another one online, which I'm not going to go for, which was a romance one, I'm pretty sure, without trying to spoil anything. It just seems, I don't know. It's very easy to complete the game, but even after you've completed the game, you can still do multiple endings on the same save. You can still do multiple side quests. Like I completed the game and then continued off from where I left off. So I don't know. The game's story is fine. I was actually satisfied with my ending that I got, but it wasn't anything special. Don't expect like a groundbreaking story. Keanu Reeves' character in this is fine. Cast wise, if we're gonna tie this into the story, but we can make it as a separate thing if you want. The cast, Keanu Reeves is the main selling point of the cast, and he's fine. If you've seen any Keanu Reeves media at all, he's absolutely fine. He has a cool part to play in the story. Obviously no spoilers, but he is average. Like he's good, but he's just as good as you expect him. Like if you've seen maybe The Matrix, he's a bit different, I don't know, but if you've seen like John Wick or that weird movie with the 2 girls in, which I had to turn off after half an hour because it was weird. What's it called? Knock Knock, I think it's called. Or like any of these movies that Keanu Reeves has been in, especially recently, it's just the same Keanu Reeves, which isn't a bad thing. The rest of the cast, I don't know if there's anyone else famous in this cast, but the cast themselves are absolutely fine. nothing special. All these areas are like a 5 out of 10. Like the whole story and cast kind of I can just mash into one, just they're fine, absolutely fine, no problems with them. There were a few points in the story that I actually felt, oh, that hit me. But there was also a few times where I was like, that's stupid, or why can't I do this choice, or yada yada yada. But besides that, a few negatives, a few positives. Overall, the story's just average. At best, it's a 6, but I think it's like a 5. It's average. It's definitely not bad. Gameplay, absolutely fine. I actually think it's better than fine. I'd give the gameplay like a 6.5, 7 out of 10, simply because although it's quite standard in terms of running and gunning, I think the skill tree for the different styles and the different ways you can play, like the hacking, I did a hacking playthrough. I thought it was very cool. The hacking's very simple. There's not as many hacks as you'd think, but it's still very cool. You can make your characters kill themselves. You can short circuit. You can non-lethally take them down with hacks and stuff. You can hack cameras a bit like in Watch Dogs. Basically, the hacking's a lot better than Watch Dogs. If you've played Watch Dogs and you're thinking it's going to be that level of hacking, it's a lot better. But it's weird because the gameplay's nothing super intense or super ingenious or anything. It just feels a lot better and seems to work a lot better, especially because of the world 2077 yada yada yada. I feel like the gameplay, and I've been playing for 40 hours, gameplay still does not feel tiring or anything. I'm on my second playthrough. When I'm on a second playthrough, and I'm also trying to 100% the game on my main playthrough, the one that I've got an ending on, and I'm actually doing that at the moment, but I've also got a second playthrough that I'm about 3 hours in to, and that's a running and gunning playthrough. That's going to be but the skill tree's kind of cool, the stuff you can get in the skill tree, like all that sort of stuff, the branches and stuff. It's good, it's solid. I'd say if anything it's very decent at the very least, if not great. Wouldn't quite say perfect, but it is very good. The gun choice is absolutely fine. Like I said, it's if you think of whatever game you think has the best gun choice of any game ever, it's not up there with that, but it is decent. It's a lot better than like GTA 5, for example. It's at very least on par with that, if not much better. It's decent, the gun choice. The vehicle choice and the vehicle handling. I love the vehicle handling. People hated it. I don't know if it's been patched since, but me personally, I really like. This is one of my favourite games, if not my favourite game for vehicle handling. I actually think it's better than some car games like Forza and stuff. But for an open world game at least, I think it's a lot better than. I've not played GTA 5 in at least 5 or 6 years, maybe more, probably more actually. But it was a lot better than that. I think they handle a lot better than the horses in Red Dead, although it's hard to get a handle on horses to cars. But sure. But most Watch Dogs Legion I recently played, it's a lot better than the handling of the cars than in that. I feel like the handling. I played the whole game in first person as well. But when you're in a vehicle, not when you're in combat or walking around the street, but when you're in a vehicle, you can actually change to third person. Although I never did, or very rarely. I thought the cars felt, and the motorbikes. I used a motorbike most of the time, but I thought all the vehicles that I used, I've not used every single one, but all the ones I used felt great. Like they felt, honestly, I'd give the vehicle handling almost a 10, if not a 10. I'd give it like maybe a 8.5, 9. Like I really like the vehicle handling. Some people seem to hate it, but maybe it was patched. I don't know, but I really like the vehicle handling. That's my favourite part of the gameplay. The wardrobe in this game is very mediocre. It's fine. I saw myself going to a lot of different shops and not liking anything they had on offer. The clothing's like average, if not slightly bad. Like I don't think it's as good as the amount of vehicles and and how good the vehicles are. I don't think it's as good as the weapon variety. Although the weapon variety isn't insanely, there's not an insane amount of variety, and same with vehicles, but there seems to be just enough. With clothes, I feel like there should be probably more clothes than there are vehicles and weapons, but that's about the same, if not less. I don't know, clothing wise, it just felt a bit, but the clothes were fine. There's nothing negative about them, especially with the new transmoggy system, whatever they call it, they've added into the game where you can put different clothes effects on different clothing items, so you can look how you want with the effects you want, kind of thing. It's kind of cool. But yeah, gameplay, I think gameplay wise you could probably get, I'm 35, 40 hours into the game and I've not got bored yet. I generally think most people could play at least 2 full playthroughs and not get bored. I'm not saying the gameplay is going to blow you away, but I've never once been playing the game and been like, oh, I have to do this, The only times I was a bit bored was with there's these brain dances you could do without spoiling out stuff. Obviously, there's these brain dances you could do. The first one was kind of cool, but then after that, you start to get bored. But they're very few and far between. Like I think I've completed the game and I'm going for 100%, and I've maybe done like 5 or 6 brain dances. Like it's quite. They're not super commonplace, and even then you can get through them quite quickly. I was never truly bored. I was just like I want to get into the actual gameplay more than these brain dances. But it's a cool system, the brain dances, and they're not out of place at all in the game. The soundtrack was decent. Soundtrack's good. Soundtrack's something that most people rate highly, and I do love when games or movies or whatever make their own soundtracks. Like I'm pretty sure 90% of the songs, like there's a song called Chippin' In, which is an absolute banger. I'm pretty sure that was made for Cyberpunk 2077. It wasn't a song beforehand, if that makes sense, from the band Samurai, which is like a fictional band in the game, which is actually Keanu Reeves' character's band. Like 99% of this soundtrack, I'm pretty sure, was made for Cyberpunk. There's a few songs here and there, like there was a classical song in one of the apartments I heard, which was just like a Beethoven song or Mozart song, or like one of those songs that I just recognised from a classical music song. But 99% of, if not all, the songs on the radio are their own. Not quite perfect. I'd say that there were certain times in missions and stuff where the soundtrack that was playing was crap and stuff like that, or not crap, but just didn't really get me in the feels. There was one mission in particular I can think of where the soundtrack was absolutely banging during this mission, and it fits so well with what you were doing in that mission. And the radio itself is cool. I mean, I listen to like jazz on the radio and like lo-fi and stuff, or lo-fi stuff. There's not really like proper lo-fi in the game, but it's like there's a radio called like Pacific Dreams, I think, and it's that similar sort of feel. Soundtrack, solid 7 out of 10, 7.5 out of 10. It's all right. I wouldn't quite give it a 10 or a 9, but it's solid. If you play games for soundtracks, I don't think you'll be disappointed with this game, but don't expect absolute best soundtrack you've ever heard in your life for a video game. There was quite a lot of glitches, even for the amount of patches. Nothing insanely game ruining, but stuff that they should very easily sort out and it should have been sorted out a while ago. In terms of my game crashed twice. I've played it for 35 hours. It's only crashed twice, and they were both within the first half an hour, I think. And in all fairness, when they crashed, as soon as I loaded up the game, it went back straight to where it crashed. Like I know there was one time it crashed. I can't remember the second time it crashed, but I know the first time it crashed, I was going to sit down. It gave me the prompt to sit down for a conversation, and as my character was going to sit down, game crashed. As soon as I loaded it back up again, this was without me saving or anything. As soon as I loaded it back up again, it just gave me that prompt to sit down again. Like it spawned me right where I needed to be. So that was something, that I was happy with, and the game takes no longer, at least on the Series S and the next gen consoles in general, it takes no longer than like 1 minute to load up from scratch, if that. So I don't know about old gen, but whatever. So I genuinely it wasn't rage inducing or anything. It was just a bit annoying that it crashed twice, but it was only within the first like 3-4 hours, and then it never crashed again for the next 15-20 hours. So I don't know why it crashed. I couldn't tell you, but and then there was a few other glitches, like I said earlier about cars that just randomly spawn on the street. I don't know if it's the same with pedestrians, I haven't noticed, but with cars, they'll just spawn out of midair and then drop down to the street randomly. The collision physics are okay. I'm fine with the collision physics, but it's not as realistic as maybe some people would like. So maybe that could be updated, but I don't know. The cops in this game are absolutely terrible. That needs a patch. The cops are abysmal. You never get the cops on you, and even when you do get the cops on you, they don't do anything. It's so easy to escape them, and they spawn out of thin air most of the time, and they're always on foot. They're never in cars for some reason. Whatever. The AI could do with a bit of tweak. Sometimes you'll shoot a gun, or sometimes you'll crash into a lamppost. Everyone will shit themselves. They'll run away like you've just murdered somebody. But then you'll shoot a gun, and everyone will be like, "Oh, what happened? I don't care." Like there's this little tweaks like that could be thinged. There was a guy I saw that was walking, and then he went to walk upstairs, and then he just walked up. His feet just stopped working. He was going up the stairs almost as if these stairs were like an escalator, and they were pulling him up. It was really wacky to see. There was also a time where it wasn't a full-on cutscene. It was like when you're talking to somebody, like think of Skyrim when you're talking to somebody, like it wasn't a full-on cutscene. But when I was talking to somebody, I looked to my right, and this guy's face was coming out of his head. It was really weird looking. But there's a few things. If honestly, Cyberpunk 2077 in 2020, 7 out of 10. Solid game. If they could fix the problems, the simple problems, maybe make the world feel slightly more alive, but just fix these problems. Honestly, I'm thinking 8 out of 10, but I don't think it will ever get to a 9 or a 10. But I genuinely really do enjoy Cyberpunk. I think it gets too much hate, although saying that, like I said, I wasn't there when the game first came out. I was looking up stuff online and stuff, obviously, but I actually watched a video from Penguin Z0 when he played Cyberpunk 2077, and it didn't look to be in the best state, and he got quite a few glitches, and most glitches, if not all the ones he experienced, I didn't. So it has to be said that there's been a lot of patches since, but I think basically, to sum this up, if the game got a few patches here and there that were substantial, because there was a patch recently where they announced a DLC for the game, which is stupid, fixed the game to a decent degree. If they've done a lot for the game in terms of fixing it and stuff, but I think the game should have been delayed even further. I know people would have hated it, but I just think that's just how I feel. And I feel like there's a few more patches they should do first to the main game before releasing. They've released yesterday, or the day before, actually, the 6th, I think it was, of September, they released a trailer for like a Phantom Liberty, I think it's called, like an expansion, like in Sleeping Dogs, where you've got the 2 DLCs. They're not part of the main open world, but they're like expansions. I think that's what they're going to be like, but whether they're in the open world or not, they're releasing a full-fledged DLC, bringing back Keanu Reeves, all this sort of stuff. And then they also have on the 13th, which I will watch because I'm somewhat interested, although I didn't like the look of the trailers, I thought it looked crap. But Studio Trigger Anime, which is the company, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, so they've got an anime releasing and a DLC releasing in sometime in 2023, they said, which is cool to know that the game will still be being updated by 2023. So if you're going to get it, but I just feel like they should fix these little things first, then branch the series out or whatever, maybe make another game or make the anime or whatever. Although I know they didn't put all their effort into the anime, because although they definitely would have had to have worked on it, it would have been the anime company that made the anime, yada yada yada. But I don't know, I just feel like it's just not very, I don't know, it is just annoying. I feel like if they fixed all these things, these simple little things first, then focused on other outside stuff, but I'll still watch the anime because I'm interested in it, but still, but yeah, overall, it's definitely worth the full price. Like I'd say it's definitely worth whatever the full price is where you are. I got it for full price. I genuinely think it is, because I don't know, it's going to constantly get updates, even though the updates can be minuscule at times. Like this 1.6 update was cool, it added some cool stuff in, but it was nothing that makes you go wow, but there's some cool updates that come, because there's going to be a new DLC that's going to be that was revealed to be in 2023. We know that the game's going to be being updated up until 2023 at the very least. Whether that's mid 2023, early 2023, I don't know. Could be late 2023 for all I know. I doubt it though. But so the game for at least the next year-ish will probably be getting updates, maybe even longer. Although on last gen I heard that there's not going to be any more major substantial updates at least. But that's for most people on next gen now, and I'm going off a next gen perspective. But yeah, the new performance mode on Series S and stuff. Yeah, but yeah, 7 out of 10. Solid game. Worth the full price. You shouldn't give in to the hatred, especially if you like these type of worlds. If you don't like these type of worlds, if you're like a person who likes puzzle games or something, don't get this, obviously. But yeah, I'd say solid game. Definitely worth it in 2020. 7 out of 10.